How are you, sir?
All right, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I appreciate you coming on my platform and conveying value to my audience about the private aviation industry.
Thank you. Glad to be here. It's very nice of you to invite me, and I'm honored to join you.
Oh, I appreciate you. Where you calling in from?
I'm in Boston, Massachusetts right now.
Oh, all righty. All right. Is it cold out there or is the weather beautiful out there now?
It is beautiful. It's just been a delightful winter here in Boston.
Okay. All righty. All right. Is that where you originally from?
I'm originally from Chicago, but I've been here 7 years, so just about achieved a local status, almost.
Ah, okay. Okay. That's where the good pizza is at in Chicago.
Indeed.
All right. You ready to rock and roll?
Ready when you're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Arthur Robinson Jr. I'm the creator and host of the Powerful Interviews podcast. And today I have another special interview for each and every one of you. Today I have a wonderful person on the show. He's a great friend of mine. His name is Todd Weeber. For those that don't know Todd, let me explain to each and every one of you about this incredible, phenomenal man. Todd Weeber, he is the Chief Operating Officer of the phenomenal brand Magellan Jets. Todd has amassed over 1,600 hours of flight time, and he served in the front line and leadership roles at Trans-States Airlines, and he's actually affiliated with the powerful brand NetJets, the largest fractional aircraft ownership services in the world. And that is an awesome, impressive resume. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the one, the only, the powerful Todd Weeber to the show.
Wow, thank you, Arthur. I'm glad to be here, and that was a very powerful introduction. I'm going to definitely check in on this recording and play it every morning to get me up and going with excitement and energy. So thank you for that wonderful and powerful introduction.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Todd, for taking time out of your busy schedule to educate me and the audience worldwide about the phenomenal brand Magellan Jets. And we're definitely going to have a conversation about private aviation. I gladly appreciate it.
It would be my pleasure. We are a service-oriented company here at Magellan, and we always enjoy meeting new people and being a resource to anyone that has questions about business aviation or private aviation or the broader aviation or aerospace industry. So literally anything is on the table. What kind of things would you like to talk about today?
What I'd like to know, and can you explain to the audience in layman's terms, who is the phenomenal Todd Weeber? How long you been in your powerful industry, and what is your expertise?
Well, I appreciate you asking. Um, I am a lifelong fan of aviation. When I was a child in Chicago, I was very lucky to be a part of a family where my dad's job required us to travel a lot. And most of the people in my family are either military people or farmers. And because we moved around a lot and wound up flying a lot for business, I just got interested in aviation at an early age. And way back in the 80s, just like it is today, it's an unusual idea for a young person in high school to say, I want to be in aviation, I want to be a pilot. And everybody was very skeptical. They wanted me to go to junior college, go to college, learn a trade, and or get into business. They encouraged me to avoid the military because of so many relatives that spent careers in there, just moving around. They encouraged me to stay in one spot, but I was very, very restless. And to prove myself, I had to go to school every day, but also hold down multiple jobs, many minimum wage jobs. Not to age myself, Arthur, but minimum wage when I was doing this was $3.35 an hour in Illinois, and
Wow.
to rent an airplane for flight instruction as a civilian it was $36, and then the instructor was another 12. So for a young man, I had to work continuously, and I was also
Mm,
involved in sports in high school. So I just had, through necessity, developed a strong work ethic, got my private pilot's license, and decided to go to an aviation school in Florida.
mm,
And as you might imagine, being in aviation, uh, at the time, it seemed to me, as a young man working multiple minimum wage jobs, like it was really expensive. But when you look at the concept of being in school for 4 years, an aviation school and a
mm,
regular school are about the same price.
mm,
So I got a 4 year degree and started building time. You have to earn flight hours and get licenses as you progress through your career.
mm,
So I can summarize it by saying I spent the first 20 years of my career in flying jobs, a wide variety of things, everything including apprentice mechanic to flight instructor to flying freight and small airplanes. And then I was privileged to catch the hiring wave in the airline industry in the early 90s. Spent 10 years in the airlines, and when 9/11 hit, my airline career was over. I was working at a regional airline called Midway Airlines.
mm,
I was very fortunate to follow some friends of mine to then Executive Jet Aviation,
mm.
which is owned by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway.
Yes.
And it opened up a whole new world to me personally, being able to fly smaller jets on different missions. Spent about 7 years flying there,
Mm,
about 12 years in management, left management to consult, wound up at Magellan Jets as a result of a consulting engagement, and I've been here for yet another 7 years. So it's an unusual background because it started with flying and teaching and wound up being a very holistic business exposure
mm,
in almost all different types of passenger carrying aviation, from propeller driven small planes
mm,
to jets in the airlines
mm,
to jets for business aviation. So the main thing that I can bring as an advisor to any of your audience members or students is that if they need advice on the broader industry or something specific career wise, we're always happy to help.
mm. Now, earlier in your humble beginnings, you basically experienced a lot of minimum wage jobs. Would you
Mhm.
ever fathom that you would be a part of a major private aviation brand like Milligan Jets?
That's a very interesting question, and the answer is no. Something that I think happens to young people, especially when they're driven, and you get that bug to work,
Mm,
and you enjoy making a difference. You get it set in your head that you're going to have a career path and that it's unstoppable. So I would say at every 5 years as a young man, I was just updating my career path, and I was determined. I knew when I was a teenager that I would be a 747 captain for United Airlines forever, or maybe have a chance to fly a supersonic airliner. Well,
mm,
life is different than any person's plans, and uh, where what I learned to do to be happy in my career
mm,
was just say yes to new opportunities. And I would have never imagined when I was 19 through 25
mm,
that I would wind up at not just one but two major business aviation brands. And it's
mm,
simply because every time there was a challenge, I said yes. And each time I said yes, I got to meet a whole new group of people with a whole new set of skills.
mm,
And so what I would say about plans is that rather than be frustrated that plans don't go exactly the way that you intended them to go, if you're open minded and humble and can learn with every new experience, you find that your life is this rich tapestry of experiences rather than just one thing for 30 or 40 years.
mm. Now, you basically, you know, experience a lot of, jobs along your journey. And
Mhm.
then you basically had the opportunity and capitalized on that opportunity with NetJets brand, which, Warren Buffett is basically, the ownership of that brand.
Mhm.
Have you ever met Warren Buffett? And if you have met Warren Buffett, what was that experience like?
It was an outstanding experience. I was very, very lucky at Executive Jet and then NetJets. I started with the company as a pilot
Mhm,
when within 12 months of Berkshire Hathaway having bought the company.
mhm,
And so the company what was and is and still has an entrepreneurial spirit with outstanding leadership, but becoming part of the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio lended a degree of confidence to both the clients and the colleagues at Executive Jet and then NetJets to perform at the highest level. Uh, the,
mhm,
the, the second dimension of my good fortune was in the spirit of that theme of continuing to say yes. I had the privilege and opportunity to work with pilots at the pilots union and wound up um, negotiating several, not just one, but several agreements with Executive Jet and NetJets, and then later joining management. And on in both sides of that process, the company is so genuine and transparent that there were multiple opportunities to meet with members of the Berkshire Hathaway board
mhm,
and also interact with Warren Buffett. And he is um, there's a common theme in the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio.
mhm,
Companies have managers that are down to earth people. They think of the top leaders in each organization as down to earth.
mhm,
They're down to earth, they're very genuine, and what you see is what you get. So
mhm,
the fun part about the mystique behind Warren Buffett is when you look him up on YouTube or you see the interviews,
mhm,
that's not a manufactured persona. That's not a series of carefully considered sound bites.
mhm,
That is the man, the guy that started with chucking newspapers.
mhm,
He too liked to just say yes to new opportunities and think about things that are uh, opportunities and take advantage of those opportunities.
mhm,
And he very consistently gives the same advice to people. So the good news is, if you have fans of Warren Buffett, it is not mysterious at all. You can look up any of his statements. The Berkshire Hathaway website has got reports and essays that he writes. He
mhm,
writes all of his own material. That is really the man. And the main takeaway from working inside one of his organizations and having a chance to interact with other CEOs or the managers in the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio is that a must is to be a combination of shrewd and prudent and also humble and guard against hubris with humility.
mhm,
And one of his favorite examples is that, and I think there's photos of his office. He's got an inbox, an outbox, and a two hard box.
mhm,
And when something comes across his desk that he just doesn't understand, he doesn't put a whole lot of time into it. He just chucks it in the two hard box and thinks that it's a great opportunity for somebody else. So he will directly connect with his audience and say
mhm,
it is really important that when you're doing something, you either do what you know
mhm,
or you surround yourself with people that know what they're doing and have the ability to communicate with them in a humble way. In other words, don't endeavor to be the smartest person in the room.
mhm,
Endeavor to always be learning from the smartest people in the room. And that way you have a greater chance of success. He also believes that if something is failing and can't be recovered, you just have to dig deep and let it go.
mhm,
So for me, I'm glad that you asked. Very few people ask about the Warren Buffett experience specifically. My impressions to this day are that he and his partner Charlie Munger are just genuine people. The way they behave on stage, on YouTube, in videos, on CNBC, that's exactly how they are in person. They really care about people and success and the American dream. And so they have lots of good lessons learned. I would caution people that when they see Berkshire Hathaway companies engaging in dealings that seem like ruthless business exercises, just keep in mind that their philosophy is always long term. So if they have to do something like separate from a company or let go of colleagues, it is always with the greater good in mind, the long term welfare of everyone. And when I say everyone, everyone at the Berkshire Hathaway headquarters staff takes very seriously the success of our society and the success of our country.
Mm. Now, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, which that's his business partner, they are value investors. Now, through your experience in regards to the private aviation industry, have you come across a lot of value investors that want to invest in their own private aviation company?
Oh, absolutely. Success in any transportation industry, and especially one as highly regulated as aviation, depends on a long term mindset. So, the people who succeed at investing in business aviation have three criteria. And it's no coincidence that we're bridging the gap from talking about the attitude at Berkshire Hathaway to the attitude at success in investing in business aviation. You have to be humble. Anytime you encounter people in aviation who are professing to know all the answers and know what is going to happen tomorrow and next year, you should not just regard them from skepticism. You should stand clear of the blast zone because there's no room in aviation for know-it-alls. The approach to aviation should be long-term and informed by data. The space is divided according to the customer type, and people who are investing in aviation should look for the type of customers that have the ability to stay in aviation long term. And the way that you can detect that is how many hours the unit inside business aviation is hours inside the airplane. So, for example, if you and I were going to buy a business jet and say to ourselves, what is this worth? How long can it be flown during a year? A well-maintained business jet should be able to be in the air or be operating for 800 hours a year. So you think of 800 hours on a jet as a unit of one for a year. So, 800, 400 for half the year, 200 hours for a quarter. And if someone says to you they're flying between 600 and 800 hours a year and they're flying private, that is an excellent customer. And a business that deals with those type of customers is a sustainable business that can outlast any economic interruption, literally any. When you encounter customers in business aviation who sporadically use it, they use it as part of a collective group or a pool of people. And together they fly less than 75 hours a year. Those are businesses that you might not want to invest in because people who fly in business aviation less than 75 hours a year are usually flying either 3 or 4 trips a year. That's it. To them, it's a luxury. It's perhaps a temporary business use. And what that means is if there's economic pressure on them or their businesses, the people that utilize business aviation less, the first thing they're going to stop doing is flying on a very expensive business jet. So from the investor standpoint, long term, if you're looking to get into a business aviation model, the first thing you want to ask if someone has got their business for sale, is tell me everything about your customers. How many hours does each customer fly? And if the average customer flies on the upper side of that scale from
Mhm.
0 to 800, let's say their average customer puts in 450 hours, that's a sustainable business because
Mhm.
even if they wind up having to cut their flying in half, let's say there's a deep, deep, deep recession, the
Mhm.
people who are accustomed to flying close to 6, 7, 800 hours a year, for them, if they cut back, they're still going to be flying 300 hours a year.
Mm.
So it is a very costly, the per unit cost of business aviation compared to other modes of transportation is unusually high. So just to keep it simple for our audience, it is an excellent investment if you're thinking long term,
Mhm.
but you must be very disciplined that the customers inside whatever business you're buying, whether it's a maintenance business or even if it's someone that provides ground services like a fixed base operator or a fuel business
Mhm.
or airplanes. Two questions. Tell me about your customer and how many hours they fly and what types of airplanes they fly. The
Mm.
last piece, besides the units of hours,
Mhm.
is the type of airplane. And I'll give you two extreme examples. You go to an airport with a big private aviation section,
Mhm.
and you will see some jets on the ramp that look like airliners, but they're private. And
Mhm.
you'll see some jets on the ramp where when you get in them, you and your friend are shoulder to shoulder and hunched over and looking at each other and going, "I know it's a jet, but is this a good idea? Because we're really cramped in here." And then everything in between.
Mm.
So it can look really confusing, but if you walk into an investment thinking, I want to know how many hours, that's going to keep you safe in one regard.
Mhm.
The second regard is the types of airplanes, because generally speaking, the larger the airplane, the fewer takeoffs and landings it does in a year by way of operating. And the
Mm.
smaller the airplane, the more takeoffs and landings it does in and of the result of its mission, right? So that kind of makes sense just looking at the airplane. That smaller airplane can't fit as much gas on it as a bigger airplane. So that one is designed to carry more people a longer way. This one is designed to carry fewer people a shorter way. And
Mm.
the way that we categorize those airplanes is the big one is, of course, called a heavy, and the little one is on the other end of the spectrum called a light. So if you
Mhm.
want to invest in business aviation or private aviation, make money to the extent that you can afford to be on the mid-size or heavier,
Mhm.
you'll get a better return on your investment because though they're much, much more expensive to operate, the types of customers that can afford it, it's the same as the hours theory, they're going to fly no matter what. The people that squeeze into a light jet and say to themselves as customers, oh, this is just 20% more than six first class seats,
Mhm.
walk up airfare.
Mhm.
They're going to be the first people to stop flying if there's something that goes wrong with their business, their life, or the economy. The people that
Mm.
fly the super mids or heavier,
Mhm.
they are generally so insulated, their companies, their lives, that for them, pulling back means instead of flying on their aircraft once or twice a week, they
Mhm.
might fly on their aircraft once a week or every other week. And so if you're the investor and you're the owner, you want your money working for you over here, where you
Mhm.
know the revenue is going to keep coming in, the midsize or heavies, same hour formula, more than what's your average customer, more than 400 hours a year, versus over here where it's light jets. There are
Mhm.
some exceptions if you cross the math over. I'll give you one example. You might find a company where they operate three of the exact same light aircraft,
Mhm.
but the average customer flies 600 hours a year. That's probably a safe bet. If you come
Mhm.
over here to heavies, and the company owns three of the exact large jet, but
Mhm.
the average customer only flies 100 hours a year, you want to
Mhm.
stay away.
Mm.
Follow?
Wow.
So the two dimensions to consider: know your customer, how many hours they fly per year, and then second, what type of airplane are they operating? There
Mhm.
are other nuances in the business aviation space, and private companies and that operate aircraft can be thought of in two buckets. One bucket is they let other people fly as passengers on their aircraft,
Mm,
and terminology is those aircraft are for hire or they can be chartered out.
mm,
And it's like a miniature airline. They have the same requirements, very similar requirements to when you walk up to the airport and buy a ticket and fly somewhere. You and I could also buy an airplane, have somebody else manage it, but only we fly on it. That
mm,
is a private, that is a private aircraft.
mm,
So within business aviation, we can operate it privately and pay another company to manage it. We can also pay a company to charter our aircraft. And those companies that are chartering our aircraft, that might be one of those cases where you and I don't meet that 600 to 800 hours a year criteria to justify owning an airplane.
mm,
And I might only justify 400 hours a year. We're going to let that charter company put the other 400 hours on it for us. So
mm,
we get to utilize the airplane and we also can treat the airplane as an investment. If I am just investing in companies,
mm,
a company that manages other people's airplanes, that's
mm,
a pretty solid, that is a pretty solid investment. Same questions as before. How many hours do these airplanes fly? If the airplanes are underutilized, you have to be worried about the airplane as a customer going away. Over here on the charter side of the house,
mm,
two dimensions. Are they operating other people's airplanes, like the one that you and I give them?
mm,
Or do they buy airplanes like an airline or lease them and then try and put all the flying on them themselves? So if you're investing in a business aviation company that flies and operates aircraft,
mm,
you've got basically three sets of questions
mm,
in addition to the two questions that I posed before. And
mm,
one is, what kind of operator are you? Are you purely private or do you hold your airplane out for charter? Oh, we hold our airplanes out for charter. Great. Do you own all your airplanes or are some of those managed aircraft? And the reason you want to ask those questions is to be able to identify how much risk there is in that business. If
mm,
they control their own airplanes because they own them, you
mm,
can leverage those assets. If they don't own the airplanes, they're not their assets to leverage. If they own their own airplanes, they control everything about them. If
mm,
they don't own their airplanes, not only do they not control all of the hours that you can send out for charter on those airplanes,
mm,
but those airplane owners need to be treated like customers because you're managing their aircraft.
mm,
And if they're not happy with the services that their management team are providing, they can take that airplane and take it to some other operator, which puts your supply chain at risk.
mm.
So that's a very good question because it allows us to identify what type of operation we're putting our jets with.
Mm. Now, you actually kind of touched on it a little bit, but can you elaborate to the audience? What's the difference between business jet brokers
Mhm.
versus service operators?
So two different types of business jet brokering when you start getting into the industry. There are people who help buy and sell airplanes, just like a car dealership.
Mm,
Aftermarket is just like a used car dealership in terms of the analogy. You
mm,
can go straight to a manufacturer, just like you can go straight to an automobile manufacturer. That is considered a type of sale and brokerage. When we think of the basic unit in business or private aviation being 1 hour of engines on, taxiing or flight time,
mm,
the unit is 1 hour. There are brokers that broker hours on the fleets. And then there are operators who operate the aircraft and do two things. They will sell those hours retail, just like you call up a taxi service and say, "Hi, I need to go from here to here. What is the fare?" You can also call up a broker and give them your mission, and they will examine all of the operators and negotiate on your behalf
mm,
for a best price. So, a way to think of an air charter broker company is to think of them like an old fashioned travel agent, where you call them up and you say, "Here's the trip I'm going on, here's my mission. I would like you to shop on my behalf and return options to me that meet all of my criteria. Or you could go direct to the hotel or direct to the taxi service and book with them.
Mm,
Where air charter brokers really succeed, if they have sufficient infrastructure and network, is they can accommodate any mission request.
mm,
Whereas most of the operators in the United States cover a very limited area. It's kind of like sedan services. If you if you are in New York City, you have a couple options. You can go to a website and you can go to a worldwide limo company and you can book a limo in any major city in the United States,
mm,
or you can just call up your local person that you know.
mm,
So the local person you know is like a local aircraft operator, and the worldwide network of limo companies is like an air charter broker.
mm. Now, I interviewed a phenomenal young lady by the name of Erin Lear, and she is the granddaughter of Bill Lear.
Mhm.
And he basically built the brand. He was the inventor of, Lear jets. What differentiates Lear jets from the NetJets brand and from the Milligan Jets brand? And have you experienced flying the Gulfstream 550?
So that is a lot of questions in one paragraph. So I will break them down.
Mm,
Let's first go through brand differentiation. Um, I'm going to stick with the automobile to aviation analogy. Um, a Learjet is a fine crafted airplane that has a lot of extra attributes specific to it, like in the automobile industry, a Bentley does. So you think about a Bentley, I can't leave here in Boston and say, oh, I'm just going to hit my Bentley dealership on the corner.
mm,
They're handcrafted, hand manufactured. It's a family business. Lear later was purchased by other aircraft manufacturers, and at one point was owned by a Canadian company called Bombardier.
mm,
And most of our listeners are familiar with that company because they fly on Canadair regional jets
mm,
operated by that company. And they might see miniature versions of those called Challenger jets, which are private business jets. The last jet under the Learjet name left the assembly line last year. So the history of that brand has come and gone, and it is iconic. Much like Bentley is still producing in limited numbers, but will probably never achieve mass market status. But if Bentley was sold to BMW, I suspect that it would have gone the same way, where BMW would have tried to replicate it as part of their line and eventually decided that something handcrafted, an iconic brand, is not part of their mass market approach. The um, the NetJets branding is more like in automobiles, an Avis rental car provider, where they have very consistent quality across the entire fleet and a standardized fleet, and you know exactly what you're going to get and what portion you get when you buy it. The Magellan Jets brand is more like Go Rentals, or a custom experience. You might even say closer to some of those car sharing services where you can get online and find a very specific luxury car for your mission.
mm,
So all of them in shared space, but a way of taking something called aircraft hours
mm,
and redistributing them according to exactly what the customer wants. There is an astonishing amount of variation and differentiation in available aircraft, available missions of those aircraft,
mm,
quality of the aircraft, and ways to buy it and utilize it. So there's a great opportunity for people who are entrepreneurial minded because with ongoing revolutions in technology, there's always opportunities for business minded, entrepreneurial minded people to enter into the business aviation space and make a huge difference. As far as the being on board aircraft is concerned, I think you asked me about the Gulfstream 550, and I have been privileged enough to uh, fly on the inside, both as a passenger and in the pilot seat of the Gulfstream 500 series and also the Bombardier Global 5000 series, which are often compared, and even the Dassault Falcon 7 series. And for a number of reasons, they're often, because they're in the same price category,
Mhm.
they're thought of as the same airplane type. But all three airplanes have got features that make them distinctly different. So a Gulfstream is an iconic brand.
Mm.
The main shape of the airplane is recognizable and has not appreciably changed in the last 30 years. Like you can walk out to the airport and go, big Gulfstream, big Gulfstream, big Gulfstream. On the inside, they're extremely technologically advanced. The engines have gone through several improvements. The cabin features are astonishing, and the navigation packages are astonishing.
Mhm.
All three of those improvements have taken place in all three manufacturers. A um, Bombardier Global has its history in the airline world, and
Mhm.
when you get on board one of those, it's more likely that you're going to have a feeling like you're in an airborne boardroom where the airplane is segmented and you can tell this is where people relax, this is where they do business,
Mhm.
this is a boardroom. Approximately the same size, same state of the art features, same engine improvements, same speed improvements. The Dassault Falcon series, similar idea, large, long haul, latest technology, but their unique attribute is other than the shape of the windows, when you get to the top of the stairs in a Falcon and you turn into it, it literally is like being in a hotel room. There's if someone pulled the shades, you'd go, wow, this is a really strange experience because I could swear I'm in a very comfortable hotel room. And much like Bentley's, Dassault Falcon goes to great lengths to provide extreme customization on the inside. So you got
Mhm.
to picture it like a flying hotel suite that can be configured any way that the owner wants.
Now, you said you experienced the Gulfstream 550.
Mhm.
Can you explain to the audience how many seats that the Gulfstream 550 actually holds?
Well, the 550, like all of these airplanes, can be custom designed. You could, if you wanted to, configure a Gulfstream 550 to complete a commuter airline style mission, and
Mhm.
you could squeeze with proper inspections and authorizations. You could squeeze 16, 17, 18 people in it. The typical configuration is between 10 and 14.
Mm. Todd, I really appreciate you coming on my show today because the whole premise of my show is to educate entrepreneurs and business owners that they can live the life that they truly desire, but they have to be open to these important principles. So I don't like what I see with some of the news, so I create my own news.
I couldn't agree more. There's no reason to ruminate on the way the world is. Instead, anyone in the audience, you or me, we could make the decision to change the world and make it the way we want it and need it to be. We just have to make those decisions and follow through on them.
Todd, explain to the audience in your own influential way, what is the best advice that you have ever received?
Oh boy, that is a terrific question, Arthur. The best advice I've received because about halfway through my life, I made a conscious decision to be open to advice. And advice comes in two forms. There are people that will adopt you to be your mentor, whether you want them or not.
Mm.
And then there are people that you seek out to be your mentor. And I've found that sometimes the best mentors are right there on the line. Like they enjoy being mentors, but they're very humble about their advice. And the best advice that I have received across the many decades of my life emerges as themes. So I'll give you the best themes that I have heard. The first theme that keeps coming up is don't take yourself too seriously and
Mm.
stay humble.
Mm.
It is very important that no one comes to the conclusion that they're an indispensable person on this planet.
Mm.
The second theme that gets louder the older that you get is that it is crucially important that you continuously maintain good relationships in your life.
Mm.
Kind of surprising, isn't it? When you dig into successful business people or entrepreneurs or entertainers, the ones who are having a great time and successful and win all of the awards, when
Mm.
you peel back the curtain, you find out that they have a fantastic support network. They might have had a rough patch in their life. They may have been disconnected from everybody. They may have hit rock bottom.
Mm.
That has happened to a lot of successful people. Do not write people off
Mm.
because they have experienced a series of unfortunate events. It is entirely possible to rebuild your support network, but no one person can achieve success by themselves. And so I would say to you and anyone in the audience, if you find yourself in a period of your life where your actions or your business are harming the most important relationships in your life instead of nurturing them, you need to stop and examine that because your businesses will come and go. Your successes will will be few and be special and be meaningful. But the most important people in your life, they should be there forever and they deserve your commitment. So it's kind of a surprising thing to hear be humble, take care of the people in your life. And then finally, a really, really important theme is you run into entrepreneurs or so called workaholics that they will skip that workout. They will go for that candy bar.
Mm.
They will hit that second energy drink. And the most important success advice that I can give to you, any of your colleagues, or any of your listeners,
Mm.
is it is not selfish to take care of yourself, body, mind, and soul.
Mm.
Because if you don't set aside the time to take care of yourself, body, mind, and soul, you're not going to be able to take care of the people around you.
Mm.
And they're not going to be able to take care of you. And you're not going to be able to take care of your business. There's something strange going on in our success culture where people seem to pride themselves on how busy they are, or how they couldn't make it to the gym, or how they didn't have time to slow down and meditate or make dinner. It
Mm.
is a huge mistake. If you are not taking the time out to take care of yourself, you will be a very lonely and unhealthy person before you know it.
Mm. Wow. Todd, let's say I'm in the sector wanting to buy my own private aviation company. Let's
Mhm.
say that, the private aviation company is doing around, you know, 850 million in EBITDA, but their net profit could be, 70 million. If
Mhm.
me and you actually teamed up and we was willing to buy the private jet aviation company, would that be a good company to purchase, or you have to do some more research in regards to if you're thinking about taking that private aviation company public?
I love that question because business and private aviation has a certain curb appeal. It seems very sexy and on the surface, it doesn't seem overly complicated. I oversimplified it earlier by saying it's ours and know your customer. But let's continue the theme of we've got humble people who are taking care of themselves and taking care of their relationships.
Mhm.
You need to take that capability and really take buyer beware to heart. It
Mm.
is really important to examine a number of things on any going concern. You open the door with the correct statement. It's got to be generating net profit.
Mhm.
So many uh, commercial aviation enterprises are in perpetual startup mode.
Mhm.
The airlines, for example, and several large companies are just in perpetual boom and bust mode. And because of that, you need to be part of a seniority system at work, and you've got to constantly have anxiety until you get to the top half of that seniority system. Business aviation is more the domain of the entrepreneur and the creative.
Mhm.
And so, your criteria, yes, let's say they're generating EBITDA, whether it's a large company or a small company. The first thing you need to know is how long. I would not I would not consider an acquisition target a viable target if it has not been generating some form of EBITDA or positive cash flow for
Mhm.
at least 3 years. And there are a number of big companies that are spending investors' money and bleeding cash and promising to someday turn it around when something magical happens or they get things just right. I encourage investors to not be part of that experiment. You can assemble a number of companies together that have all proven success. So once you know that whatever system has been set up is consistently generating cash, consistently generating profit, it is 100% about the people that work there.
Mhm.
100%. You've got questions for them. Well, if you've got this company that is so successful for 3 years in a row, why are you looking for an investor and why do you want to sell it?
Mhm.
And there's really only two good answers. One answer is I'm ready to retire and this has been my passion project for years
Mhm.
and I have no successor. The second good answer is in the business aviation space, companies sell at a discount.
Mhm.
So you'll hear people say, well, if I went out on my own, I'm only going to be able to sell this thing in a great, great year for 8 to 9 times EBITDA. And that sounds like a lot, but a really great aviation company is throwing off between 5 and 12%. So,
Mhm.
that doesn't add up to a lot. There aren't any business aviation companies where you can sell them and the founders are going off and buying private islands.
Mhm.
But if someone wants to sell their company to become part of a greater whole that is perhaps aligned with customers that are resilient. So
Mhm.
if you put a business aviation company next to a family office company, next to a company that deals with other luxury transportation services,
Mhm.
and wrap it all up together with a common technology platform, you could say to them, well, they want to sell and they want to invest to be part of the bigger picture because when it's time to exit, instead of selling at a discount, which is compared to publicly owned companies, is what I'm trying to say, of 8 to 10 times EBITDA, they can be on board with something that can perform twice as well when it's time to exit.
Mhm.
Um, there are so many opportunities in aviation because it's highly fragmented and highly siloed. And
Mhm.
what I'm not recommending is that you just roll them up into something bigger because something huge that sells at 7x is still something huge that's selling at 7x.
Mhm.
The opportunity that I'm putting on the table for you and the audience is if you intelligently combine the aviation company with a broader portfolio and look at the pro forma and how the earnings per share start to roll out, well,
Right.
then you've got something that will come out at 2 or 2.5 times more value than if they went it alone. So it's interesting. You asked me about good advice, and it was very thematic around um, people. Let me recap: humility, the relationship with people, and taking care of yourself. Well, there's this thing about investing in the right company. You want to find like-minded people that think that way,
Right.
and limit it to a group of people who are all generally moving in the right direction. Imagine the entrepreneurial power if you could find 20 to 25 people that all were involved in different types of luxury services and luxury aviation services, and they wanted to combine forces. And they have a vested interest in taking care of their colleague
Mm.
from a standpoint of humility
Mm.
and personal care and taking care of their relationships. That is an unstoppable force.
Mm.
So let me recap the business criteria for you. Positive cash flow and EBITDA for 3 years, no compromises. It doesn't matter how shiny that object is. Do not get sucked into startup mode with anybody. Two, make sure you understand the reasons why they want to sell, because a good looking business for 3 years could be a business in distress if the leadership team is fractured or they own assets or property that are under some kind of duress.
Mm.
So complete due diligence. And then wrap it up, most importantly, with a group of people that you truly enjoy working with, which I know it sounds impossible in a hyper competitive um, marketplace,
Mm.
but it really is possible to find like-minded people that want the same objective. And what that does for you, author, is it builds a foundation of trust, and you don't spend any time second guessing your colleagues. Every single day, it's almost like a Disney film. You're just moving forward, just moving forward, just moving forward without any doubt.
Mm.
So spend the time on the people. So if you got cash flow, if you got unencumbered assets and due diligence works out well, walk away if the people are not a good fit.
How much it costs to basically charter a private jet?
Large variability. Let's go back to those different sides of the room. That heavy over there, and I'll break it down per hour. The most exquisite heavy jet can be in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000 for 1 hour. The
Thirty,
light
forty
jet
thousand dollars 1 hour.
for 1 hour. The
Okay.
light jet on the other end of the spectrum, we
Mm.
can pack a bunch of people in it,
Mm.
uh, no more than four, and we can go for an hour for about $1,500. That would be the least expensive one. And
Mm.
so the bulk of the flying is right there in the middle. Let's just call it $8,500, $9,000 an hour.
Mm. That's absolutely amazing. Todd, do you have any last pearls of wisdom for the audience?
No. I, I appreciate the question, but I feel like I frankly feel like you're putting me up on a platform. I suppose I'll share experience. Whether or not it's wise is up to the listener.
Mm.
People, I suspect that your audience is full of people who have an excellent mindset.
Mm.
They might have experienced some kind of hardship. They may still be carrying a burden, and they've got that vision board and they're picturing where they want to be. Maybe like something behind me. They don't want to be flying that jet. They want to be walking up those stairs and getting into it and saying, "To France, let's go." Well, what I want to remind the audience of is like any journey, any recovery, any form of progress, it does not happen in a straight line. You
Mm.
need to be able to anticipate setbacks. You need to be able to anticipate the bad days and not be discouraged, and
Mm.
use the bad days as an investment.
Mm.
Because when you're having a great day, the only comparison I want people to do looking in the rearview mirror is this is a much better day than that terrible day I had a few days ago. Um, it the graph never goes in a straight line from one corner to the other. You're always making progress, setback, making progress, setback.
Mm.
It's just really important to not get caught up in thinking that everything's got to be perfect all the time.
Mm.
It's really important. That's why I keep harping on the work with people that you enjoy, because that way your business life will be more about the journey and less about the, gosh, what do they call it? The strain in your mind of not yet having reached the destination.
Mm. Can you explain to the audience exactly where they can find you?
Oh, exactly where they can find me? Um, that is a great question. You can always find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Todd Weeber. You can also find me at Magellan Jets at toddw@magellanjets.com. And I welcome people to send me a note to my personal Gmail. That's S as in Sierra, Weber, Weeber, @gmail.com. I am a very accessible person. It is important to me that all of us together, sharing this space and sharing this planet, do whatever we can to help each other out. So I want everyone in your audience to know that if business aviation is something that you're passionate about, you'd like to be able to invest in it with confidence. I was, you didn't know it, I was, I am, and I always will be at your service.
Oh, I appreciate that, Todd. To everyone that's listening and watching right now, I highly recommend get involved with the phenomenal Todd Weeber. You heard the passion that came through his voice on my show today. He broke down layman's terms about private aviation. He broke down layman's terms about business private jet brokers versus service operators. And he also talked about the price that you have to initiate in regards to managing the private jets and private aviation. Todd, I'd like to thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule to educate me and the audience worldwide about the Magellan Jets brand and about the NetJets brand and about the power of private aviation. I gladly appreciate it. You are a gift from God.
Well, thank you very much for that. It was a privilege and an honor to be here. Thank you for introducing business and private aviation to your audience. It truly is a land of opportunity, and there is room for everyone. So please join us.
Absolutely, absolutely. To everyone that's listening and watching right now, I highly recommend subscribe to my YouTube channel and play this interview over and over and over again, because it is golden nuggets in this interview about the power of private aviation. So to everyone that's listening and watching right now, remember that the strongest asset that each and every one of you have is your brain and what you think about and what you take action on that will become your reality, and your mentality creates your reality. May God bless each and every one of you, and bye for now. Thank you, Todd. I really appreciate you conveying value to my audience.
Thank you. The pleasure was mine.
And bye for now. Have a pleasant day, everyone.
Bye now.